I chose a small group of works that we can discuss and we can talk, and I can explain the connection between the use of electricity in a sustainable way. But what was interesting to me to discuss in this situation, that is even if you use an energy, or you use electric light, or basically a resource that is renewable, because is originated by renewable resources, such as, you know, the water or wind. You know, the electricity you can create from through many different systems, not necessarily from an atomic plant, right? As we know, in usually the way is produced in first world countries. So understanding that we can see, or we can use the electricity or electric light from different sources. I went back to when I was experimenting with the use of electricity. I went back to the meaning of, as you said in the introduction, the meaning of electricity during the time I was growing up in a very complicated social situation in Chile during the dictatorship. The use of electric light and electricity was very tight connected to the government and how to control the population. So one way of controlling was by creating fake blackouts in the city, meaning they would blame the people who were against the government, that they were bombing the gigantic electric towers in order to create blackouts in the city, and they would call them terrorist attack. But what really happened was the actual government, they were creating those blackouts, and they were bombing the towers like a fake terrorist attack or real terrorism, in order to keep the population in the darkness. And that way people wouldn't come out to the street, or they wouldn't protest, or they would just keep them as if they were keep them prisoners in their homes. So that was a very interesting situation that I grew up with, a constant blackout. Practically every other day there was a blackout when I was growing up. And then another use of the electricity during that period was the use of electricity as a tool of torture, and a very, very violent way of making people interrogate people when they were prisoners. So in this situation, the pieces I like to explain about is how I can give a different meaning to the use of electricity and to the use of light after growing up in such a complicated social situation. Of course, I've made many pieces that talk directly about the use of torture and the meaning of blackouts. But in this particular situation, I wanted to talk about another side of the use of electricity. So, so if we're going to start by the two first images. Okay, that's perfect. So in 1999, I made this piece. It's called Satellite, and it's basically based in the use of a little tiny device that you bicycles use that is called a dynamo. And it's a small electric generator that you attach to the bicycle wheel, and you can create electricity while you are pedaling the bicycle, right? So I took that idea and I create this sculpture, this piece that it allows you to create electricity and understanding that electricity can give you a sort of an independence. You create your own source of power. You can, and by using the human power, you can, it's a very utopic idea about how can we be independent from a source of power, from even from a government or from a power structure. How can we create our own way of living and our own way of communicating ourselves without being tied to an institution, for example? So this piece is that's why it's called Satellite, because it's a piece that you can basically install anywhere you want, and it doesn't need to be connected to the electric power in order to work. And it's a poetic idea about calling for action, calling for independence, and calling for being activist about how can we, the artists, or we, the common people, can create our own source of power. And now, of course, this brings a lot of metaphors when we talk about solar cells, when we talk about wind power, all the things that unfortunately, where my point here is, we can create things with a lower budget than those very difficult or very expensive devices that right now are all not really accessible to everyone, because it's not that accessible to implement a whole set of solar cells in everybody's roof. So we can, my idea is taken from people who create their own little system of survival, and how to, in this case, how you can take apart your bicycle and turn it into another kind of device that will give you some kind of energy to, it could be to power some supplies at your home, or you can just use it as a flashlight, or you can just make a lighthouse. It could be, is really just a proposal for an idea of calling for attention. We can go to the next one, to the video. Okay, so this video was made in 2004, and it is the documentation of a performance that I did with this sculpture, with this shopping cart. The shopping cart is made out of fluorescent lights, and the piece was made in New York. And the main inspiration of the piece is the way homeless people live in the city in New York. People need to find people, let's say, people with no resources need to find different alternatives or different strategies to create energy to survive again. So in this case, what I did, I did a research on how people survive in the city, how people survive under the subway tunnels, and how they can, they can cook in the street, they can turn a TV, they can do many things, they can even build a house around the street lamps, because the street lamps in New York, they have, it's very interesting, they have an outlet in the base, as you can see where I'm plugging my sculpture. They have a small power source, and in this power source, people in New York really use it as an alternative to survive and to create sort of things. They can, as I said before, they build a tent all around this. I mean, they're temporary because, and then police come and they have to leave and they're being kicked out. But the idea of being very resourceful and inventive is I think is a way of understanding energy and use energy in a way that is not connected to, or somehow it doesn't create any pollution. It's the opposite. It gives you alternatives, it gives you opportunities to take advantage of what's available in certain places in the city. And I think at this point that things are getting so expensive and many people are being very marginalized from the high technology. I feel that this is the time that we should find solutions that are hidden they're hidden in front of our faces. They're right there, but we can if we are a little bit more inventive and if we look a little bit farther than what is being shown every day, we can find solutions that are not that are reachable for everyone. And that's my one of the aims that I try to communicate with my work too, that how we can find solutions that can be implemented in our ordinary, in our everyday life. The video was actually connected to a soundtrack that I feel that it was very interested to make that connection. It's a Mexican song that it comes from the Mexican Revolution, from the his land, his all everything that the person owned, and the person couldn't even die because it didn't have a place where he can just rest in peace. So the idea of the shopping cart is this idea that we are constantly looking for a place to power our energy. We can go to the next one. Okay, so this piece is called Resistance, and it's from 2009. This piece was together when you said that I participated at the Venice Biennial in 2009. Actually, this piece was also there in the pavilion, and this work was similar to the first piece I showed you, the satellite. But in this particular case was a movie, was more like a short film with the sculpture, and the idea was to create to go through a very high technology space in New York, which is a place that many people know, that is the heart of Times Square, where there are all these gigantic LED billboards. So after midnight, when not many people are in the street, or I brought this sculpture, which is a bicycle with two generators, one in the front wheel and one in the back wheel. And at the back, there is connected this object, which is sort of like a chair made out of fluorescent lights. And the idea was, when the person pedal in the bicycle, it will give power to the sculpture at the back. So the person will come from 48th Street, which is the beginning of Times Square and the north part, and then we'll ride down the bicycle all the way through Times Square and try to create this big contrast between high technology and low technology. And that's why it was important to make this piece as a short film, in order to represent and show how the resistance of the person, of the body, of his muscular power would create electricity, and not the super high end electricity or high end illumination that the urban landscape was showing. It was very interesting also to see the interaction with people, because people really, it's very interesting when people in the street are confronted to see something that they don't know exactly what it is, because we weren't doing a show, we were just filming the video. So people were very interested to see the mechanism and how we were creating light, but for very short periods, because you really need the resistance and the power of the person to create the lights. So it was almost like a very spiritual, I was calling it like a very spiritual moment, when the light will be completely up and very bright, and the person was running, sort of like running against the enemy, running against the high technology. And the video was made between, I think it took us 5 hours. We were working between midnight and 5 in the morning. So that was an interesting experience. We can go to the next one. Okay, so this is another. This is just a short, a fragment of the whole video, and the video is called Relay. And the idea was, we chose an area in Central Park that is a loop, and we would go riding this bicycle. It was also connected to a generator in the back of the wheel, but the generator was lighting up LED lights that were sewn into in the back of the jackets of each one of the person, and sort of like sending very subtle political messages to the people who were jogging or spending some time in Central Park. Now, what is important here, or the content of the video, which is based in this idea of the dynamo, the generator, during the wars especially the war in Algeria in the 50s, the French military was using the telegraph device, which also works in the same way, by rolling the telegraph with your hand, and that creates electricity. Okay, that small device is exactly the same device as the dynamo, but during that war, the military was using that device to torture people with electricity, giving some small shots of electricity in order to interrogate people during the war. So basically the dynamo is the very it is the device that during the dictatorships in South America was used to torture a lot of people. What is interesting is in this video, the soundtrack is a whole conversation, an interview to the French military in Brazil during the 70s. In Brazil, there was also a dictatorship during the 70s, and this military attaché coming from France, his name was Paul Osarens. He also worked in the war of Algeria, and he, interesting enough, he is the responsible of bringing these torture techniques to Latin America. You can only be connected to the rest of the world if you have the economical level to buy the devices that let you do that. And it creates an unbalanced situation in the world, because not everybody can reach the content or the information that we are exposed to.
Someone else asked, like, climate change is strongly related to this issue of social justice and imbalances. And I think your work is a very strong testimonial to this relationship and to this. So which artwork would you think you feel changed your audiences the most? Or
say it again, the last part. I'm sorry, say it again. Which work?
Which artwork did you feel changed your audiences the most, and which artwork did you think was the strongest testimonial in this sense, in the sense of social justice?
Well, I think the first piece I was telling you, Satellite, it was a total inspiration from when the time I grew up in Chile, there were tons of shanty towns around the city. Very poor people would make small houses and shacks and live in the city, and then suddenly they would create a whole neighborhood, made out of very precarious houses. But the way they would be connected to electricity was just tapping into the electric system, just like the way we were doing it with the shopping cart. So the first piece, the piece called Satellite, for me, it represents what I saw in Chile when I was growing up. How can you create your own electricity? But and then for me, the strong piece, as you were asking me, the pieces with the shopping cart is also for me a very strong statement, because it talks, it's very clear about a specific context of the use of electricity and the use of the device to survive in the city, especially created by the homeless people in New York.